Hey guys, tonight we are slipping back in time, about 4,500 years, to the arid plateau of Giza. Imagine, for a moment, you are standing in the pre-dawn chill, the immense, dark shape of a half-finished pyramid silencing the horizon. It's a world without electricity, without machinery as we know it, a world lit only by the sun, the moon, and the flickering flame of an oil lamp. We are going to live through a single workday in the life of a pyramid builder. And, to be perfectly honest, a modern person dropped into this era. Well, without modern medicine, sanitary standards, or even a decent pair of work boots, your chances of a long and happy career here are statistically quite slim. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It's a quiet and simple way to support the channel, and feel free to post your location and local time in the comments. It's always fascinating to see where everyone is tuning in from around the globe. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The awakening is not gentle, but it is silent. There is no bird song yet, no clatter of a modern world gearing up for the day. Instead, you are pulled from a shallow, dreamless sleep by a subtle shift in the air, a deep, internal clock that knows the sun is still a long way from the edge of the world. You are lying on a reed mat laid directly upon a packed earth floor. The mat is thin, and the ground beneath is cool, leaching warmth from your body. You lie still for a moment, staring up into a perfect velvety blackness. Your home has no windows, only a single doorway covered by a hanging mat, and a small opening in the roof for smoke, so the darkness inside is absolute. Slowly you sit up. The rough weave of the mat scratches slightly at your bare back. Your body aches. Not a sharp, acute pain, but a deep, resonant thrum of fatigue that has settled into your bones. It's the ache of yesterday's labour, and the day before's, and the one before that. It's a constant companion. Beside you, in the small, one-room space, you can hear the soft, rhythmic breathing of your family, or perhaps other workers if you live in the communal barracks. The air smells of dust, dried mud, old reeds, and the faint, human scent of sleep. You push yourself to your feet, the packed earth cool and smooth beneath your bare soles. This is your home, a simple, rectangular structure made of sun-dried mud bricks, a substance of Nile silt, clay, and straw. The walls are thick, keeping the home relatively cool during the day's blistering heat, and retaining a measure of warmth during the cool desert nights. The roof above you is a lattice of palm logs, covered with reeds and a layer of mud. It serves its purpose mostly. Reaching for a coarse clay pot in the corner, you pour a little water into a shallow bowl. It's lukewarm and tastes slightly of the earth it was stored in. You splash it on your face, the simple act a small shock that chases the last vestiges of sleep away. You are a pyramid builder, a skilled labourer, an artisan in your own right, contributing to the most ambitious construction project the world has ever known. This isn't a sentence but a duty. A mainstream fact often lost to cinematic portrayals is that the Great Pyramids were not built by slaves. You are a paid worker, or more accurately, a conscripted citizen serving a term of national service. Much like jury duty, but with a lot more heavy lifting. Your home, this food, the very clothes on your back, are provided by the royal administration. You are a valued part of a vast, meticulously organised machine. Your breakfast is waiting. It is the same as yesterday and will be the same tomorrow. A round, dense loaf of Emma wheat bread called tar. It's gritty. Sand from the grinding stones inevitably finds its way into the flour, a constant assault on the enamel of your teeth. You break off a piece, its texture coarse and tough. Alongside it is a clay mug of beer. But this is not the crisp, golden beverage of the modern world. It is thick, more like a thin porridge or a watery gruel. It's nutritious, packed with calories from the partially fermented grain, and the alcohol content is just high enough to kill any stray bacteria in the water used to make it. For you, this beer isn't for leisure, it's a form of liquid bread, a fundamental part of your daily caloric intake. Some historians even suggest that a worker's wage was often counted in standardized units of bread and beer. Just imagine getting your paycheck in a six-pack and a sourdough starter. You eat in silence, chewing slowly, methodically. The sour, slightly sweet taste of the beer washes down the tough bread. You must eat. The work ahead demands every bit of energy you can consume. Dressed is a simple affair. You wear only a short kilt made of coarse white linen, wrapped around your hips and tied at the waist. In the cool of the pre-dawn, you might feel a slight chill, but you know that in a few hours, even this simple garment will feel like too much. Stepping out through the doorway, you join a world that is slowly, quietly coming alive. The sky is no longer black, but a deep, soft indigo, with the brightest stars still scattered across it like spilled salt. A sliver of a pale moon hangs low in the west. The air is still and cold, carrying on it the smell of wood smoke from 100 other homes now stirring. You pull the rough fabric of your kilt a little tighter. Your village, known today as Hayt el Garab, the Wall of the Crow, is a sprawling, planned settlement. It's a grid of long, gallery-like dormitories and smaller family-style mud brick homes, all interconnected by a network of narrow, dusty streets. And from these streets, a river of men is beginning to flow. At first, it's just a trickle, a shadow detaching itself from a doorway, another joining from an alley. But soon it swells into a current, a quiet procession of thousands of your fellow workers. The only sounds are the soft scuff of bare feet on the dirt path and the low, scattered murmurs of a few men exchanging quiet greetings. You fall into step, one among many. You might see the members of your ZA, your gang, the 10-man crew you work with day in and day out. A nod is exchanged, a silent acknowledgement of the shared day to come. You pass the larger houses of the overseers and the more intricate tombs of the foremen, men of status who are buried here, right beside their life's work. Historians still argue whether this honored burial, so close to the sacred pyramids themselves, was a unique reward bestowed directly by the pharaoh for exceptional service, or simply a practical consideration for a permanent, highly valued workforce. For you, it's just a landmark on your daily walk. And then, as you round a corner and the workers' town falls behind, you see it. It fills your vision. The Great Pyramid. Even half complete, its geometric immensity is staggering. It is a man-made mountain, its dark, stepped form blotting out a huge section of the brightening sky. It seems to hum with a silent, dormant power. The fine, white Tura limestone casing stones that already sheathe its lower levels catch the faint, ambient light, glowing with an almost supernatural luminescence. This is why you are here. This is the tomb of your king, your god on earth, Khufu. Building this structure is not just a job. It is an act of ensuring Mayat, the cosmic balance, the fundamental order of the universe. To house the pharaoh's eternal spirit is to guarantee the continued flooding of the Nile, the rising of the sun, and the stability of the entire kingdom. Or so the priests say. At this hour, you are probably more concerned with the 20-ton block of granite your team has to move today. Your divine purpose can wait until after your midday ration of figs. The pyramid looms, a silent promise of the toil ahead. The commute to greatness is short, but the shadow it casts is very, very long. As you draw closer to the pyramid's base, its scale shifts from impossibly vast to personally overwhelming. The lowest layers of casing stone are at eye level, then tower above you. Each block is the size of a large chest, maybe bigger, and they fit together so perfectly that you can't slip a knife blade between them. A river of men, just like your own procession, is now fanning out across the plateau. The air, once still and silent, is now beginning to buzz with the energy of 10,000 workers starting their day. The sky in the east has turned a soft, rosy pink, and the top of the pyramid has just been set ablaze by the first direct rays of sunlight. You and your Zay, your gang of 10, divert from the main flow of men heading towards the colossal ramps and make for the administrative area. This is the daily check-in. It's not as simple as punching a clock. Here, a formidable-looking overseer, the IMIR, stands with his arms crossed. He has a staff of office, a mark of his authority, but his real power comes from the scribe standing beside him. The scribe is the true nerve center of this operation. He isn't carving grandiose hieroglyphs for eternity. He's taking attendance on an ostracon, a large smooth piece of broken pottery. It's the ancient Egyptian equivalent of a notepad, cheap and readily available. He makes a quick mark next to your gang's name, his reed pen flying with practiced ease. This is the bureaucracy that makes a project of this scale possible. Without these men, with their lists and their inventories and their relentless accounting, the whole enterprise would crumble into chaos faster than a mud brick wall in a flash flood. Your gang's official name, graffitied in red ochre by your own men on hidden parts of the stone, might be something boastful like the Friends of Khufu Gang. A well-known historical fact is that these gangs had names, often competitive or boisterous, like the famous Drunkards of Menkor gang who worked on a later pyramid. You hope your foreman isn't trying to live up to a name like that. Today, the scribe confirms your assignment with a flick of his wrist. Not hauling, not finishing, but quarrying. A new supply of standard blocks is needed for the upper courses. You are sent not to the distant quarries of Tura across the Nile, the source of the fine white limestone for the outer casing, but to the local Giza Plateau quarry, just a short walk away. This quarry is where the bulk of the pyramid's body comes from, the slightly coarser, yellower limestone that forms its core. The walk takes you past the ever-growing city of the dead, the field of mastabas, the flat-topped tombs for high officials who want an afterlife with a good view. The quarry itself is a vast, sunken scar in the landscape, a testament to the sheer volume of stone that has already been moved. It's a human-made canyon, with stepped geometric walls where blocks have been systematically removed, level by level. Your team finds your designated spot. The morning sun is now properly up, washing the world in a clean, bright light. The chill is a distant memory, replaced by a pleasant warmth on your skin. An experienced member of your gang, a master quarryman, inspects the rock face. With a piece of charcoal, he carefully marks out the dimensions for the next block. A standard block, perhaps 2.5 tons. He measures not with a tape, but with his own body, using the royal cubit, the length of a forearm from elbow to fingertips. the same standardized unit that dictates every single dimension of the great monument itself. Then the work begins, and with it the symphony of construction. Your main tool is a simple copper chisel, barely harder than the stone it's meant to cut. You kneel down, place the chisel's edge against the charcoal line, and your partner brings down a heavy wooden mallet with a dull, solid thwack. A puff of white dust, a tiny spall of stone flies off. And again, thwack, and again, thwack. The rhythm is everything. It is slow, it is punishing, it is maddeningly repetitive. The copper of the chisel blade blunts quickly, the soft metal bending and dulling against the rock. Every hour or so, you'll have to take your collection of blunted chisels to the on-site smithy, a makeshift furnace where a man with powerful lungs and leather-tough hands will heat and hammer your tools back into shape. He's the most popular guy on the Giza Plateau, and there's always a queue. Around you, other teams are using different techniques. Some men are using heavy, round pounders made of dolerite, a stone much harder than limestone. They simply bash and grind away at the rock, creating wider channels through sheer brute force. The noise is immense, a cacophony of rhythmic hammering, the grating scrape of stone on stone, the shouts of foremen, and the high-pitched ping of hundreds of copper chisels striking rock in unison. You ignore it. You have to. You focus on your line, your chisel, the rhythm of the mallet. Your hands are already raw, your knuckles scraped. Your back is a taut, protesting line of muscle. To break the block free from the quarry face, you must cut deep channels on the top and both sides. But the real ingenuity, a quirky little tidbit of ancient engineering, is how you will separate it from the bedrock at its base. Your team has already painstakingly chiseled a series of small, deep holes along the bottom line of the block. Into these holes you hammer seasoned wooden wedges until they are packed tight. Historians still argue whether this was the only method for the final, crucial split, or if a team of men would also have to lie on their stomachs to slowly chisel away underneath the block in a dark, cramped space. You certainly hope it's the former. Once the wedges are secure, the water carriers arrive. They pour water over the dry, thirsty wood. Then you wait. The work doesn't stop. You move on to chiseling the next channel. But all the while, a silent, powerful miracle of physics is occurring. The wood swells. Slowly, imperceptibly at first, and then with an unstoppable, colossal force, it expands inside the stone. After an hour or two, a low groan will emanate from the rock itself, followed by a sharp, clean crack. A fissure will appear along the base, and a multi-ton block of limestone, born millions of years ago, will have been detached from its mother rock by the simple swelling of wet wood. It feels less like quarrying and more like coaxing a stubborn fruit from its branch. You feel the sweat begin to bead on your forehead and trickle down your temples, tracing paths through the fine white dust that already coats your skin. That filling breakfast of bread and watery beer feels like a lifetime ago. You are thirsty. Not desperately, not yet. But the need for water is a low, persistent hum in the back of your mind. You wipe your brow with the back of a gritty hand, reset your chisel, and nod to your partner. The sun continues its climb into the vast blue Egyptian sky. The day is still young, and the Great Pyramid needs more stone. The mallet rises and falls again. Thwack! The sun has made its slow, merciless climb to its throne at the zenith. It hangs directly overhead, a searing white disk in a bleached-out sky. The world has lost its colour. The limestone of the quarry is now a brilliant, painful white, glaring with such intensity that you have to squint your eyes to mere slits. The air itself seems to tremble with heat, a visible shimmer rising from the stones. The wooden handle of your mallet is hot to the touch, and the copper of the chisel blade seems to radiate its own fiery energy. The rhythm of the work across the vast quarry begins to falter. The synchronized thwack, thwack, thwack becomes ragged, intermittent, as men pause to wipe sweat from their stinging eyes. The collective energy is draining away under the oppressive solar bombardment. And then it comes. A long, deep blast from a horn, blown from the direction of the main construction site. The sound cuts through the cacophony of work, a command for silence and stillness. Every mallet is dropped. Every chisel is laid down. For a moment, the only sound is the ringing in your own ears and a vast, collective sigh that seems to rise from 1,000 parched throats. It is the midday break, mandatory and profoundly welcome. The royal administration is not cruel, it is practical. A worker who collapses from heat exhaustion is a worker who cannot move stone. The great work and the workers must be preserved. You rise slowly, your knees creaking in protest, your back a column of solid ache. You and your gang gather your precious newly sharpened tools and move away from the exposed rock face. Finding shade is the only priority. You trudge towards the north side of the quarry, where the high wall you have helped to create now offers a long, deep slice of shadow. You find a patch of dusty ground and slump down, your back against the cool, vertical stone. The relief is instantaneous, a feeling so sublime it is almost dizzying. Other gangs do the same, filling the shaded areas, their talk low and guttural. Soon the water bearers appear. They are boys mostly, too young for the heavy work but still part of the great machine. They move efficiently among the resting men, carrying large clay jars filled with water from the Nile, heavy yokes across their shoulders. One comes to your gang, and you hold out your rough clay cup. He tilts the jar, and a stream of lukewarm water pours out. It is the most delicious thing you have ever tasted. You drink it not in gulps, but in slow, measured sips, letting the moisture soothe your raw throat. You pour a little over your head, the water tracing clean rivulets through the white mask of limestone dust that covers your face and neck. Following the water is the food ration. It arrives in wide, shallow baskets carried by older men. There is more of the morning's bread, dense and sustaining. But with it comes your protein for the day, a piece of dried salted fish. The smell is pungent, but to you it is the scent of replenishment. The fish is tough, and you have to chew it thoroughly. But the intense saltiness helps your body hold on to the water you are so desperately drinking. And to round out the meal you are given a few small, fiercely strong onions and a couple of crunchy radishes. You bite into an onion as if it were an apple. The sharp, sulphurous explosion of flavor is a jolt to the system, a raw and vital taste that cuts through the blandness of dust and fatigue. It's an ancient energy shot, and you feel a little more human with every eye-watering crunch. It's a simple meal, a laborer's meal. Miles away in his palace, the god King Khufu is likely dining on roasted goose, honey cakes, and wine from the finest Delta vineyards. You do not resent this. It is the way of the world. It is Ma'at. He is the sun, you are a single ray. During this precious respite, another figure makes his rounds. He is the Swan W, the doctor. He is a respected man, a skilled craftsman whose medium is the human body. He moves with a calm purpose, his linen kilt cleaner than most, carrying a wooden chest inlaid with bone. He stops at a nearby gang where a man has a deep, weeping gash on his forearm, a gift from a slipped chisel. You watch as the WNW works. This is practical medicine, not magic. He gently cleans the wound, not with water but with beer, washing away the grit and grime. The alcohol stings and the injured man flinches, but he does not cry out. Then, from a small pot inside his chest, the doctor scoops out a thick, golden substance with a clean wooden spatula. It's honey. It's a well-known historical fact that the ancient Egyptians understood honey's potent antibacterial properties. He smears it liberally into the wound, the viscous fluid sealing the injury from the dusty air. Then he wraps it all tightly with a clean strip of linen. A simple, effective treatment that has saved countless limbs and lives on this project. Of course, not all treatments are so rational. You've heard the stories of poultices made from things that sound more like a curse than a cure. You think of some of the bizarre remedies listed in older medical papyri, prescriptions involving crocodile dung, lizard blood, or fly specks, designed to drive out demons and malicious spirits. You're just glad your local SWNW seems to favor the honey. Historians still argue whether the SWNW of this era was seen as a physician in the modern sense, a proto-scientist dealing with the observable world of wounds and breaks, or if he was viewed more as a high-level magician, his practical skills inseparable from the sacred incantations he would mutter to ward off infection. For you, sitting in the shade with your aching back, he is simply the man who stops a small cut from turning into a week of fever and a lifetime of regret. The rest of the break passes in a low murmur of conversation, or for some, in a state of silent, eyes-closed meditation. You finish your onion, dust the crumbs from your kilt, and lean your head back against the rock. The sun has begun its slow descent, its power just slightly lessened. The horn will sound again soon, signaling the start of the second half of the day, the hauling. For now, there is only the precious, life-giving shade, the lingering taste of salt and onion, and the deep, profound rest of weary muscles. But it is never enough. It is just a pause, a brief moment to gather your strength before you offer it once more to the great mountain of stone. The call of the horn rips you from your lethargic state. The sound signifies the end of rest, and every man pushes himself to his feet. The midday reprieve is over. Your gang and a dozen others leave the relative cool of the quarry and are reassigned, not back to the familiar work of cutting stone, but to the ramps. This is the art of the haul. This is where the sweat and muscle of thousands is converted into vertical feet, layer by glorious layer. The ramps themselves are a wonder of engineering, their exact form a subject of ongoing scholarly debate. Were they one long, straight ramp that grew with the pyramid, as depicted in old movies? Or did they spiral around the structure, a gently sloping road clinging to its face? Some theories even suggest a complex internal ramp system, a hidden corkscrew within the pyramid's core that we have yet to fully discover. To you, it doesn't matter what the grand design is. What you see before you is a monstrous mountain of packed earth, chipped limestone, and reinforced with timber sloping upwards at a manageable but still daunting angle. The surface is slick in places, plastered with a smooth layer of Nile mud or taffla to reduce friction. Your team's task for the afternoon is a newly quarried block, a typical 2.5-ton beast that you helped hew from the earth this morning. It already rests lashed to a large, heavy wooden sled. The ropes are thick, woven from palm fibers, their circumference as big as your forearm. They are impossibly heavy and stiff, biting into your shoulders and hands even before the strain is applied. The sled doesn't have wheels. The wheel, while known in Egypt for things like pottery and small toys, was not yet used for transport or construction on this scale. Your technology is far simpler: muscle, leverage, and sheer, bloody-minded determination. 20 men, you and your gang plus another, are assigned to this one sled. 10 to a rope. You take your position, leaning forward, finding your footing on the hard-packed earth. You look ahead at the man in front of you, and behind you another 10 men brace themselves on the second rope. An overseer, perched on a rock a little way up the ramp, stands with his hands cupped around his mouth. He is the conductor of this orchestra of grunts and groans. This is not a silent struggle. Silence is inefficient. The key to moving impossible weight is rhythm and coordination, and the key to that is the chant. The overseer begins a low, guttural call and response chant, a rhythmic work song that has echoed across this plateau for decades. It is not melodious, not pretty. It is a tool. He calls out a phrase, a steady, driving beat, and on the final syllable, all 20 men respond with a single, explosive syllable of their own. Ha! On that beat, on that one single unified moment of sound, you all heave, you lurch forward, your entire body straining. The ropes bite deep into the raw skin of your shoulder. Your leg muscles scream as you dig your bare feet into the dirt, desperate for purchase. For a terrifying second, nothing happens. The stone is a dead weight, an immovable piece of the earth's own core. You and 19 other men are putting the absolute sum of your strength against it, and it does not yield. It feels like trying to pull the horizon closer. And then, with a deep, groaning shudder that you feel not just in the rope, but through the very soles of your feet, the sled lurches. It scrapes forward, just an inch. The overseer continues the chant. Again the call, again the response. Ha! Another unified pull. The sled slides another few inches, its wooden runners grating against the earth and mud. You are not pulling a stone, you are pulling a building 1 inch at a time. The absurdity of it all would make you laugh if you had the breath for it. Water boys scurry ahead of the sled, not for you this time, but for the stone. They pour water onto the path of the runners, creating a slippery layer of mud that further eases the friction. It's a simple trick, but it makes the difference between moving the block and being defeated by it. Remember that odd scene from the ancient tomb of Jehutihotep, depicting 172 men pulling a massive statue. The image clearly shows a man pouring liquid in front of the sled. For centuries, Egyptologists debated if it was a ceremonial offering. Now, we know better. He was the lubrication guy. A simple, practical solution to a monumental problem. The work is agonizing. Your world shrinks to the man in front of you. The rough rope in your hands, the dust kicked up into your face, and the burning in your muscles. The sun, now moving towards the west, is no longer directly overhead, but it is still fierce, beating down on your exposed back. There's a quirkiness to the organization here, a mainstream historical fact often overlooked. The gangs were highly competitive. As you struggle up the ramp, another team might be on a parallel path, hauling their own block. Shouted insults, jeers, and taunts are exchanged between the teams. The drunkards of Menkor are sober today, one of your gang might yell. A coarse retort comes back. It fosters a rivalry that pushes each team to pull harder, to work faster, to prove they are the best gang on Khufu's sacred mountain. Throughout this entire grinding process, the overseer's watchful eye is constant, but he is not the only one watching. Further up, sitting in a sliver of shade cast by a pile of finished blocks, is a scribe, not the attendance taker from the morning, but an inventory man. He has a wooden board on his lap and a palette of ink. He meticulously records the progress of your gang, making a note of the block's origin in the quarry, its designation, and its successful journey up the ramp. Every single piece of the pyramid is accounted for. This is a state project managed with the same bureaucratic rigor as collecting taxes or managing grain silos. The pyramid is a ledger book written in stone, and this scribe is one of its most important accountants. You are not just hauling a rock, you are delivering a specific, itemized component, fulfilling a line item on an ancient, unimaginably vast bill of materials. Slowly, painfully, foot by agonizing foot, your gang and your sister gang drag the sled up the massive incline. You are now 50 feet above the ground, then 100. The world below shrinks. The workers' village is a small, neat grid of brown boxes in the distance. The Nile is a shimmering green ribbon far to the east. You see none of it. Your gaze is fixed forward. The chant continues, your one point of focus in a world of pain and effort. Ha! 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 Each grunt is a small victory, another few inches of immortality for your king, another step closer to the end of your own agonizing day. The sun, now a great, tired ball of orange, sinks towards the western desert. Long, deep purple shadows stretch out from every rock, every undulation in the landscape, and most of all, from the great monument itself. The pyramid's shadow now swallows the entire worksite, a cool, dark tide that rushes over the plateau. The air, for the first time in hours, begins to lose its fiery edge. A gentle breeze kicks up, carrying the scent of the distant river and the promise of evening. Your body, slick with sweat and grime, feels the chill, and the goosebumps that rise on your arms are a strange but welcome sensation. Just as the sun's upper rim touches the horizon, the horn sounds for the final time. It is a long, sustained blast, a note of release that echoes across the sands. It signals the day's final toll. Tools are lowered, ropes are coiled, and a profound, collective stillness descends. The work is done. You stand for a moment, letting the strain seep out of your limbs. Your hands tremble with fatigue, and your shoulder feels as though the rope has been permanently branded into it. You straighten your back, a slow, creaking process that sends a chorus of pops and groans up your spine. The journey home is the reverse of the morning's commute, but it is a profoundly different experience. In the morning, the procession was quiet, orderly, filled with a reserved, potential energy. Now, the river of men flowing back to the village is louder, more chaotic. Men talk, they laugh, hoarse, exhausted laughs, and they complain. The camaraderie of a shared hardship fills the air. You walk alongside the members of your gang, not saying much, too tired for anything more than a companionable silence. Each step is an effort. Your feet, tough as leather from a lifetime of walking barefoot, are still sore and bruised from the day's work on the unforgiving ground. You look back one last time. The pyramid stands silhouetted against the spectacular Egyptian sunset, a sky painted in impossible shades of orange, red, and violet. Its perfect geometric shape is stark against the dying light. It looks less like a construction site now and more like what it is meant to be. A magical object, a stairway to the heavens, a piece of eternity resting on the earth. It is a thing of awesome, terrible beauty, and you helped build a tiny fraction of it today. You delivered one stone. The thought is both humbling and, in a strange, weary way, deeply satisfying. A Arriving back at the village feels like reaching an oasis. The narrow streets are bustling now, lit by the flickering orange glow of small fires and clay lamps. The air smells of cooking food, baking bread, and the scent of human life. You part ways with your gang members, nodding a final weary goodnight. You duck back into the familiar darkness of your own mud brick home. It is quiet. Your family may already be asleep, or they may be waiting for you. Your evening meal is a repeat of lunch. More bread, perhaps a handful of dates or figs for a touch of sweetness, and whatever vegetables are available. But tonight, there is also a hearty lentil stew, warm and comforting, bubbling away in a clay pot over a small fire of dried animal dung, which burns surprisingly clean and slow. You sit on your reed mat, your back against the cool mud brick wall, and eat slowly, scooping up the stew with pieces of your tough bread. Every spoonful feels like pouring life back into your exhausted body. After the meal, there is still work to be done, but it is small, personal work. You take one of your blunted copper chisels that didn't get resharpened at the smithy, and a smooth, hard stone. You sit in the dim light of a single sputtering oil lamp, a small clay saucer with a wick made of twisted linen floating in sesame oil, and you begin to methodically grind and sharpen the chisel's edge. Mending your tools is as much a part of the job as using them. Tomorrow will demand a sharp edge. A small, quirky, fringe tidbit suggests that some workers would even use this quiet time for personal hobbies. Archaeologists have found small, beautifully carved game pieces, simple statues, and even doodles on ostraca. Little pieces of art and humanity created in the precious moments after a long day's work. You have no such energy tonight. You might also tend to your body. Using a strigil-like tool made of wood or bone, you scrape away the caked-on layers of limestone dust, mud, and dried sweat. There's no evening shower, only this dry cleaning, followed by rubbing a little sesame oil or castor oil into your cracked skin to soothe it. You examine your hands, the calluses thick but with new blisters forming underneath. Remember that potential crocodile dung sunscreen from the morning's thoughts? You'll take the sunburn. You are a living record of your labor. Every scar and callus a sentence in your life story. Finally, there is nothing left to do. The small fire is banked. The tools are put away. The village outside is growing quiet, the boisterous energy of the return giving way to a shared, profound weariness. You unroll your sleeping mat onto the cool, familiar earth. There is no mattress, no pillow. You might use a folded piece of linen, or even a curved wooden headrest, an uncomfortable-looking but surprisingly common ancient Egyptian piece of bedroom furniture. You lie down. The ache in your body hasn't vanished, but it has subsided into a low, familiar thrum. Your thoughts drift. You think of the massive stone you hauled, now resting high up on the ramp, waiting for the masons. You think of the chant, the rhythm of ha, 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 which seems to echo in your very bones. You think of the sun on your back, the taste of water in your throat, the fierce bite of the onion at midday. These are the textures of your life. Through the smoke hole in your roof, you can see a few brilliant stars beginning to appear in the ink-black sky. They are the same stars that the Pharaoh sees, the same stars that will look down upon this pyramid for thousands of years to come. In the immense silence of the desert night, you feel very small, a single grain of sand next to the great mountain you are building. But you are a vital grain. Without you and the 10,000 others just like you, the mountain would never rise. Sleep comes quickly, a heavy, dreamless curtain falling over your consciousness. You do not fear the morning, you do not hope for it. It will simply come, and you will wake, and you will eat your bread, and you will walk to the pyramid once more, because the great work is not finished. How gossip spread in a 19th century English village. The day begins as so many do in this part of England. Damp. You find yourself on a narrow, muddy lane in a village that feels as though it has been sleeping for a century. The year is sometime in the late 1800s, and the world of steam and iron feels very far away from this little hamlet of stone and thatch. Let's call the village Little Muttering. It feels appropriate. Grey clouds hang low, misting the air and clinging to the thatched roofs like a heavy, damp blanket. Each cottage seems to sag a little under the weight, their limestone walls streaked green with moss. The only sounds are the gentle patter of drizzle on the cobblestones and the distant melancholy bleat of a sheep. You are drawn to one particular cottage, a little way from the green. It has a slightly more prosperous air about it. The window panes are clean, and a thin curl of smoke rises determinedly from its chimney. Let's go inside. You don't need a key, you simply are. You drift through the heavy oak door and find yourself in a small, low-ceilinged parlour. The air is warm and smells of beeswax, dried lavender, and the faint, sweet bitterness of a slow-burning coal fire. A tall grandfather clock in the corner ticks with a slow, deliberate rhythm, each tock a soft, woody punctuation mark. In the silence of the room, the space is crowded but tidy. Dark, heavy furniture gleams with polish. Lace doilies sit like captured snowflakes on every available surface. Upon the mantelpiece, stern-faced ancestors captured in sepia-toned photographs gaze out with expressions that suggest they wholeheartedly disapprove of whatever you're about to witness. Before the hearth sit two women. The elder of the two, we'll call her Mrs. Gable, is the lady of this little house. She is a widow of some, but not extensive means. She sits in a wing-backed armchair, a piece of furniture designed less for comfort and more for promoting a ramrod-straight posture, lest you forget your place in the social order for even a moment. Her dress is dark bombazine, practical and respectable, and her hands, though lined with age, are busy with a piece of mending. Her needle moves with a steady, practiced rhythm, a mirror to the clock's relentless tick. Her guest is a woman perhaps 20 years her junior, Miss Hemlock. She's the village's resident spinster, a woman who survives on a small inheritance and a great deal of social currency. Her position is precarious, making her both an excellent keeper of confidences and an even better distributor of them. She is perched on a smaller, stiffer chair, a cup and saucer balanced on her knee with the practiced ease of one who has drunk countless cups of tea in countless parlours. For a long time nothing is said. This is the overture. The ritual of tea must be observed. The pouring, the offering of the milk jug, the delicate clink of a silver spoon against porcelain. The tea they are drinking is a comfort, which, on a good day, tastes mostly of tea, and not, as was a common complaint, of iron filings and dried sheep's dung used by less than scrupulous merchants to bulk up their product. It was a constant risk, buying goods from afar. You trusted your local grocer to be your filter against the world's deceptions, but you could never be entirely sure. They speak of the weather. Of course they do. It is the great, neutral territory of English conversation. They discuss Mrs. Gable's rheumatics, which are always worse in the damp. They touch upon the quality of the sermon last Sunday, which was, they agree, a trifle long-winded, even for the Reverend Abernathy. These are the prescribed pleasantries, the gentle hum of social maintenance. But as you watch, you feel a subtle shift in the room's atmosphere. Mrs. Gable's needle slows. She glances towards the window where the rain traces wavering lines down the glass, ensuring the lane outside is empty. She then looks to the door leading to the scullery, listening for the movements of her young maid-of-all-work. The girl is safely occupied, her clattering muted by the thick stone walls. The room is secure. Historians still argue whether these seemingly private conversations were a form of social policing or a genuine support network for women who were otherwise excluded from public and economic power. Perhaps they were both. A way of quietly enforcing village norms while also sharing information vital for navigating a world that offered them so few direct advantages. Mrs. Gable clears her throat. She sets her mending aside in her lap, a sign that the true purpose of this visit is about to begin. "Susan," she says, and her voice is suddenly a notch lower, more intimate. She uses Miss Hemlock's given name, a call to attention. "You are a friend, a true one. I know I can trust you with a matter of some delicacy." Miss Hemlock's eyes, which had been placidly surveying the room, now fix upon her friend with a new, sharp intensity. Her posture does not change, but you sense a coiling of energy within her. She gives a single slow nod, a silent promise of absolute discretion. Her expression is one of grave sympathy, beautifully performed. Mrs. Gable leans forward, the fabric of her corset creaking in protest. Her voice drops to a thread of a whisper, barely louder than the hissing of the coals. "It concerns young Mr. Abernathy," she murmurs, "the vicar's son. The first piece of bait is laid. The vicar's family is untouchable, the moral bedrock of the village. Any news concerning them is, by definition, Grade A material. He returned from his studies in Oxford a changed man," Mrs. Gable continues, her gaze unwavering. "I had my suspicions when he took to avoiding his father's company, always walking out late. My Eleanor saw him near the old coaching inn 2 nights past, long after decent folk were in their beds." Miss Hemlock gives a small, almost imperceptible tisk of her tongue. It's an expression of commiseration, an invitation for more. Here it comes, the heart of it. "It is not just late nights," Mrs. Gable whispers, leaning so far forward her face is almost in the firelight's glow. "The butcher's boy, who delivers to the vicarage, heard the Reverend and his son in a most terrible argument. The boy could not help but overhear." She pauses, letting the second-hand nature of the information add a layer of plausible deniability. "He has debts, gambling debts, Susan, significant ones." Miss Hemlock's breath catches, a tiny, sharp intake of air. This is worse and therefore better than she could have imagined. The son of a man of God. A gambler. "But that," Mrs. Gable says, delivering the final devastating blow, "is not the worst of it." She glances at the door again, a fleeting, nervous tick. "To clear his name and pay what he owes, he has gone and gotten himself secretly engaged." A gasp from Miss Hemlock. Genuine this time. An engagement is a public matter, a transaction between families. A secret engagement is a scandal. "To whom?" she breathes. Mrs. Gable looks at her friend. This is the moment of pure transaction, the transfer of a heavy, precious stone of information from one hand to another. This is the 19th century equivalent of leaning over in a meeting to show your colleague a spicy text message. "To Eleanor Croft," she says, her voice thick with meaning. The draper's daughter. And there it is, the payload. It is a masterpiece of gossip. It contains folly, gambling, hypocrisy, a vicar's son, secrecy, the engagement, and most importantly, a delicious breach of the class divide. The Abernethys are established gentry, old money in a sense, even if it's the slightly threadbare money of a clergyman. The Crofts are trade. They are new money earned from the selling of fabrics and ribbons, a fortune built on commerce, not land. This was the great tension of the era, the uneasy marriage of the landed gentry and the rising industrial and merchant middle class. An Abernethy marrying a Croft would be the talk of the county, let alone the village. Miss Hemlock's mind is already racing. You can see it in her eyes. The information is nesting there, finding its place, cross-referencing itself with every other scrap of news she has collected. She composes her face into a mask of horrified sympathy. "Oh, my dear," she says, reaching out to pat Mrs. Gable's hand. "How dreadful for the vicar, for his poor wife. The shame of it." But beneath the performance, the seed has not just been planted. It has been watered, warmed by the fire, and has already begun to sprout. The story is alive now. It has left the realm of private worry and entered the world as something new, a story to be told. The secret is no longer Mrs. Gable's alone. And in a moment, when Miss Hemlock has finished her tea and puts on her bonnet and cloak, it will get up and walk right out the door with her, into the soft, grey, waiting world of little muttering. Miss Hemlock exits the warm, conspiratorial bubble of Mrs. Gable's parlour and steps back into the damp embrace of the village lane. The air is cool on her cheeks. She adjusts her bonnet, tying the ribbons with firm, decisive movements, as if securing a precious cargo for transport. For a moment, she stands still, ostensibly letting her eyes adjust to the muted light. But you know what she is really doing. She is planning her route. A general does not move his army without a map, and a gossip of Miss Hemlock's calibre does not wander aimlessly. Her journey through the village will be a masterclass in strategic dissemination. She begins not with a sprint, but a leisurely stroll towards the village green. The ground beneath her sensible boots is soft, and she picks her way around the deeper puddles with a practiced grace. Her first destination is the most logical one, the nerve centre of all village communication. Forget telegraphs and fast mail. For raw, unfiltered human data, nothing beats the village post office. The post office is not a grand dedicated building. It's a room tacked onto the side of the baker's shop, a hybrid enterprise typical of rural life. The air inside is a chaotic but comforting blend of scents. The yeasty warmth of fresh bread from next door, the musty paper smell of letters, the sharp, metallic tang of the ink stamp, and a faint hint of Higgins, the postmistress, who always smells of lavender and mothballs. Mrs. Higgins stands behind a high wooden counter, her spectacles perched on the end of her nose. She is sorting a small pile of letters, her hands moving with an efficiency that belies her age. She is the keeper of secrets by trade. She knows who receives letters from London and who gets penny dreadfuls mailed in plain wrappers. She knows who is late paying their bills and who receives regular correspondence from a military post in a faraway, sun-scorched colony. Knowing the content of a secret is one thing, but Mrs. Higgins holds a different kind of power. She understands the flow of information. "Good morning, Susan," Mrs. Higgins says, her voice as crisp as a new banknote. Her eyes, magnified by her lenses, are sharp and miss nothing. "Agnes," Miss Hemlock replies, her tone one of mild, everyday pleasantry. She approaches the counter, a performance of needing something mundane. I was just wondering if the afternoon mail had been sorted yet. I'm expecting a letter from my cousin in Bath. This is, of course, a complete fiction. Her cousin in Bath writes once a year, and that letter arrived last spring. But it provides the perfect excuse to linger. Mrs. Higgins shuffles through the small stack of mail. Not a thing, I'm afraid, dear. Perhaps tomorrow's coach. The formal business is concluded. Now, the real transaction can begin. Miss Hemlock leans ever so slightly against the counter. She lets out a small sigh, one of worldly weariness. Well, perhaps it's for the best. One feels there is quite enough. News. In the air today. As it is. This is the opening gambit, an empty hook cast into the water. Mrs. Higgins, an old fish who recognizes the lure, takes it with professional calm. "Oh?" she asks, not even looking up from her letters. "Anything of note?" "I've just come from poor Mrs. Gable," Miss Hemlock says, her voice sinking into a confidential murmur. Her spirits are so very low. It's this wretched weather, I suppose. It gets into the bones. She pauses, then adds, as if it's a mere afterthought. And worries about the state of the world weigh so heavily on a good Christian soul like hers. She's building a nest of plausible deniability. She isn't gossiping, she is sharing a prayer request in waiting. Mrs. Higgins now looks up. The mention of Mrs. Gable, a known social barometer, has her full attention. "I confess," Miss Hemlock continues, lowering her voice further still. "She spoke of the vicarage. You know how she holds the Reverend in such high esteem." A tiny shake of her head. "She frets so, especially for that boy of his, young Thomas." The name is out, the subject is declared. Mrs. Higgins pushes her spectacles up her nose, a signal to proceed. Miss Hemlock does not simply dump the whole story of gambling debts and secret engagements onto the counter. That would be clumsy, amateurish. Instead, she gives Mrs. Higgins a curated version, a single potent drop. There is a rumour, just a silly village rumour I'm sure, that the boy's time in Oxford has led him into some financial embarrassments. Financial embarrassments. A perfect euphemism. It is vague enough to be deniable, yet specific enough to be deeply intriguing. Mrs. Higgins absorbs this information, her expression unchanging. She will add this to her vast internal ledger of village secrets. She will not repeat it verbatim. Instead, when someone else mentions young Mr. Abernathy, she can now say with authority, "Ah, yes, I had heard he was having some difficulties." She becomes a validator, an authenticator of the narrative, a crucial role in the ecosystem of gossip, a little like a modern-day fact-checker, if the facts were just more rumours. It was in spaces like this, incidentally, that a quirky historical tidbit finds its home, the concept of the red letter day. This came from the practice of marking saints' days and holidays in red ink on church calendars. For the likes of Mrs. Higgins and Miss Hemlock, the arrival of a juicy piece of gossip was its own kind of red letter day. Miss Hemlock, satisfied with her deposit, buys a single stamp she does not need, a small fee for the transaction. She then departs, leaving the information to incubate in the warm, yeasty air of the post office. Her next stop is across the green, the draper's shop, Mr. Croft's establishment. This is a bolder, more provocative move, going to the very epicenter of one half of the story. The bell above the door jingles, announcing her arrival. The shop is a wonderland of textures and colours. Bolts of calico and flannel are stacked on shelves, and ribbons of every conceivable shade are coiled on wooden spools like sleeping, colourful snakes. The air smells of sizing, dust motes dancing in the shafts of light from the large front window, and behind the counter stands the man himself, Mr. Crockett. He is a sturdy, well-dressed man whose success is written on his face and in his slightly too tight waistcoat. Next to him, arranging a display of lace collars, is his daughter, Eleanor. She is the reason for all of this. Eleanor Croft is pretty. But in a village where there are maybe a dozen eligible young women, being pretty isn't a description, it's a profession. She has bright eyes and a quick smile, and she greets Miss Hemlock with the practiced pleasantness of a shopkeeper's daughter. "Good morning, Miss Hemlock. Can we help you today?" Mr. Croft asks, his voice hearty. Again, the pretense. "Just a yard of plain black ribbon, thank you, Mr. Crockett, for my Sunday bonnet." As Eleanor measures out the ribbon, her fingers deft and quick, Miss Hemlock employs a different tactic. Not the subtle insinuation she used with the postmistress, but a shower of benign compliments, each one with a tiny hidden barb. "Eleanor, my dear, you are looking particularly radiant today," she coos. "City life must agree with you. One hears you have become quite the regular visitor to Oxford." This is a clever little thrust. It's phrased as a compliment, impossible to take offence at. But it's a public statement, a linking of Eleanor's name with Oxford, the very place young Mr. Abernathy has just returned from in disgrace. Mr. Croft stiffens almost imperceptibly. Eleanor's hands hesitate for just a second over the ribbon. A faint blush rises on her cheeks. It could be modesty. It could be guilt. To the casual observer, it's nothing. To a connoisseur of social subtext, it is a blazing confirmation. Miss Hemlock continues her assault by kindness. It is so important for young ladies to have broadening experiences. It prepares one for, well, for all that life has to offer. She smiles a sweet, knowing smile, takes her neatly wrapped ribbon, and pays. Her work here is done. She has not said a single untrue or malicious word. She has merely observed, connected two publicly known facts, Eleanor's radiance and her trips to Oxford, and let the listeners in the shop, two other customers are now pretending to be fascinated by a bolt of grey wool, draw their own conclusions. She has watered the seed. Here, in the very soil where the Crofts have built their respectable lives, she has introduced a speculative element that will grow, twisting around their reputation. The whisper from Mrs. Gable's parlour is now a murmur, echoing off the bolts of cloth in the draper's shop and nestling in the mailbags of the post office. It is moving, multiplying, carried on the polite breaths of feigned pleasantries, and Miss Hemlock's work for the morning is not yet finished. She still has the butcher and the baker to visit, not candlestick makers, sadly. That rhyme never quite held up in reality. Each stop will be an opportunity to tailor the story, to shape it for a new audience, ensuring that by lunchtime, the tale of the vicar's son and the draper's daughter will have seeped into the very foundations of Little Muttering. By midday, the drizzle has conceded defeat, giving way to a pale, watery sunshine that does little to warm the air but makes the damp cobblestones gleam. The private whispers and carefully curated insinuations of the morning have done their work. The story, like a mycelial network, has spread unseen beneath the surface of village life. Now it is time for it to fruit, to break out into the open in the two great public forums of Little Muttering, the church and the pub. Though they serve polar opposite masters, God and Mammon, they perform a remarkably similar social function. They are where the village sees itself and where it passes collective judgment. Your attention is first drawn to the slow tolling of the church bell. calling the faithful for a midday service or, more likely, a smaller weekday prayer meeting attended by the most devout and those with the most time on their hands. You find yourself inside St. Jude's, a cold stone building that smells of damp hymn books, beeswax and centuries of quiet piety. The light inside is thin, filtered through stained glass windows depicting solemn-faced saints who look as if they too have heard a rather troubling rumour. The pews are sparsely populated. A handful of older women, Mrs. Gable among them, their backs ramrod straight against the hard oak. The butcher is here, looking uncomfortable in his Sunday best on a weekday. And in the front pew, as always, sits the vicar's wife, Mrs. Abernathy, a small, bird-like woman whose face is etched with a permanent, gentle worry. Today that worry seems to have carved itself a little deeper. Her husband, the Reverend Abernathy, stands at the lectern. He is a man whose authority comes from his position, not his presence. His voice, which booms with righteous fire on a Sunday, is today thin and reedy. He speaks of forgiveness, of the weakness of the flesh, of the snares laid by the devil for the unwary soul. It's a standard off-the-shelf sermon, but today every word lands with a specific, unintended weight. The congregation is not really listening to the sermon. They are reading it. The vicar's sermon is no longer about the abstract soul. It's about his son. The snares of the devil are no longer metaphorical. They are card tables in smoky Oxford backrooms. The weakness of the flesh points directly to a clandestine romance with a girl from the wrong side of the class ledger. The subtext is so thick you could cut it with a communion wafer. As the Reverend speaks, you watch the subtle, silent communication flowing through the pews. Mrs. Gable catches the eye of the butcher's wife. A tiny, almost imperceptible shake of the head is exchanged. It says, "Dreadful, isn't it?" The poor man having to stand up there and speak. The butcher's wife returns a slight raising of the eyebrows. He knows. He must know what people are saying. There is no actual conversation. It's all done with the nuanced body language of people who have known each other their entire lives. Look at poor Mrs. Abernathy. She sits immobile, her gaze fixed on the altar, but her gloved hands are twisting a handkerchief in her lap, shredding the poor piece of fabric into a damp knot. She can feel the eyes on her back. She knows that the commiseration being felt for her is laced with a delicious, thrilling pity. This is the public dimension of the gossip. The family at the heart of the story is now isolated, placed on a stage without their consent, their private pain turned into a public spectacle. The church, a place of sanctuary, has been transformed into a quiet, cold amphitheatre. Historians call this kind of social pressure charivari, a folk tradition of public shaming, though it was usually much louder and more raucous than this. What you're seeing is its quiet, polite, soul-crushing Anglican cousin. After the short service, the congregation files out into the pale sunshine. Here, the murmurs can become actual words. The vicar and his wife make a hasty retreat to the vicarage, a silent admission that they cannot face the gauntlet of post-service pleasantries. Such a powerful message from the Reverend today, one woman says to another, her voice dripping with insincere sympathy, on the importance of fortitude. Indeed, her friend replies, one prays his family finds it. The conversation is a masterclass in saying everything by saying nothing. Now, as the afternoon wears on, you follow the male contingent of the village to the second, an arguably more honest public forum, the Bell and Antlers. You push through the heavy door into a fug of stale beer, wood smoke and damp wool. The pub is the church's dark twin. Where St. Jude's is cold and echoing, the pub is warm and crowded. Where the church demands silence and introspection, the pub encourages noise and debate. Here, the story of the vicar's son will be examined not with hushed reverence, but with boisterous analysis and a healthy dose of earthy speculation. Mr. Croft, the draper, is already here, nursing a pint of ale at a small table in the corner. His usual joviality is gone. He's trying to appear casual, but his presence here at this unusual hour is a statement. He is showing his face, daring anyone to speak ill of his daughter in his hearing. The butcher, free from his church-going collar, stands at the bar, talking in a low voice to a local farmer. Into this tense atmosphere walks young Thomas Abernathy himself, the man of the hour. The low hum of conversation in the pub falters for a beat, then resumes, a little too loud, a little too forced. Every man in the room is aware of his arrival. Thomas, oblivious, or perhaps just choosing to ignore it, strides to the bar. He's handsome in a slightly dishevelled, bookish way, but today he looks pale and strained. He orders a brandy, a spirit far too expensive and ostentatious for a casual afternoon pint in a village pub. It's a confirmation of sorts, a sign of a troubled mind, or of tastes beyond his station. Maybe both. A silly joke making the rounds at the time was about the so-called three-bottle man, a gentleman who could drink 3 bottles of port after dinner and remain upright. By ordering brandy in the afternoon, Thomas looks like he's trying to earn a similar, though less celebrated, reputation. He takes his glass and turns, surveying the room. He sees Mr. Croft in the corner. Their eyes meet. The pub falls silent again. This is a moment of pure, unscripted drama. What will he do? Will he ignore him, confirming the secrecy and shame? Will he approach him, confirming the engagement? Thomas hesitates, then, squaring his shoulders, he walks over to Mr. Croft's table. He pulls up a chair. He doesn't speak, not at first, he just sits. Mr. Croft looks at him, his face a stony mask. From a scholarly point of view, you're witnessing the practical negotiation of social class in real time. The vicar's son, representing the old gentry, and the draper, representing new commercial wealth, are sitting together in a public house, their families' futures hanging between them. The unwritten rules are being tested. "Sir," Thomas says finally, his voice clear and steady, though you can see the pulse ticking in his throat. Mr. Croft gives a slow, deliberate nod. "Mr. Abernathy." The story has now reached its critical peak. It has brought the 2 central players into a public confrontation. The men at the bar are unabashedly watching now, no longer pretending to be engrossed in their own conversations. They are hearing the murmur for themselves. They see the evidence before them. The whisper that began in Mrs. Gable's quiet parlour has become a silent, public spectacle. The gossip has done its job. It has forced the secret out of the shadows and into the harsh, judgmental light of the community. What happens next will not be a secret any longer. It will be the new, acknowledged reality of little muttering. The silence in the bell and antlers stretches out, thick and heavy as treacle. The shared air in the pub is charged with unspoken questions. What words will pass between the young man of breeding and the man of trade? It is a tableau of the entire affair. Class, love, money and honour, all sitting at one small sticky table. Thomas Abernathy, his face pale, and Mr. Croft, his expression unreadable, simply stare at each other. The confrontation that the gossip has engineered seems poised to boil over into an open argument or perhaps a solemn pact. But it does neither. After a moment that feels like an hour, Mr. Croft gives a short, sharp nod, not of warmth, but of acknowledgement. He stands up, deliberately places his empty pint glass on the table, and walks out of the pub without a backward glance. He hasn't offered acceptance, nor has he offered condemnation. He has simply left. It's an act of magnificent ambiguity. He has neither confirmed nor denied the story, but his public departure from a shared table with Thomas Abernathy leaves the strongest impression yet. There is fire behind all this smoke. Thomas is left alone at the table, the subject of every eye in the room. He takes a large swallow of his brandy, the spirit burning a harsh path down his throat. The gossip has done its work. It has isolated him, branded him, and forced him into a public display of his private troubles. The murmur that started the day has become a roaring silence. He finishes his drink quickly and leaves, a solitary figure walking into the fading afternoon light. The show is over. The crowd can disperse. The hum of conversation returns to the pub, but it is different now. The speculation has solidified. The story of young Abernathy's trouble is no longer a rumour. It is now an established fact in the village's collective consciousness. You feel a pull to drift back through the village, to observe the aftermath, the ripples spreading out from that central dramatic moment. You find yourself once again near the draper's shop. The closed sign hangs in the window, even though it is still hours before normal closing time. Through the large front window, you can see the family within. Mr. Croft stands by the counter, his back rigid. Mrs. Croft is weeping quietly into a handkerchief, and Eleanor, the radiant Eleanor from the morning, is sitting on a stool, her face buried in her hands. The rumour that was so thrilling, so abstract when whispered in a parlour, has found its way home, and it is not thrilling at all. It is a tangible, heavy thing that has settled over this family, bringing with it shame and uncertainty. Later, as evening draws in and lamps are lit in cottage windows, you see the story settling into its final form. It is no longer breaking news. It is now just a story, an anecdote to be told. The women of the village, meeting at the communal water pump to draw water for the evening, speak of it in knowing tones. Did you hear about the draper's girl, one might say? Aiming a bit high, wasn't she? The men, sharing a final pipe outside their doorways, will talk of the boy. Never trust a lad sent to Oxford. Comes back with more debts than sense. The narrative is being polished, its complex edges smoothed down into a simple moralistic tale. A fable about pride, class, and the folly of youth. This is how communal memory works. It takes a messy, human situation and turns it into a tidy story that reinforces the village's existing values. The finer points, the possibility of genuine love, the pressures on a young man, the ambitions of a rising family, are all lost, sanded away by the relentless tide of public opinion. Even Mrs. Gable, the story's original architect, now speaks of it with a kind of detached pity. A terrible business, she might say to her next tea guest. One's heart goes out to them all. She is no longer the source, merely a compassionate observer of a tragedy she helped create. That's the beauty of gossip. Its true authorship is always diffuse, impossible to pin down. It belongs to everyone and no one. As the weeks pass, the story begins its slow fade. Like a popular song, it is everywhere for a while, and then, gradually, it is replaced by new stories, a dispute over a boundary fence, the scandal of a prize-winning pig that turns out to be suspiciously overfed, the unexpected arrival of a distant cousin with a dubious past. The story of Thomas and Eleanor doesn't vanish completely, but it recedes. It becomes a part of the village's tapestry, a single thread of a particular colour woven into the larger pattern. When Thomas Abernathy is seen in church, people will remember. When Eleanor Croft walks down the street, they will recall the whispers. It becomes a part of their identity within the village, a historical footnote attached to their names. It is interesting to note that in an age before mass media, gossip was one of the primary tools for disseminating information, a kind of folk journalism. It was notoriously unreliable, often cruel, and subject to endless distortion. A little-known and perhaps apocryphal quirk of history suggests that some powerful individuals would employ rumour-mongers to strategically start or quash stories to influence public opinion, an early and messy form of public relations. Was Miss Hemlock a freelancer in this trade? Probably not. For her, it was likely about maintaining her social relevance, the currency that kept her connected and afloat. Eventually, the story finds its conclusion. Thomas Abernathy, unable to face the quiet judgment of the village and the strained silence of his family, takes a clerical position in a dusty industrial town in the north, far from the green lanes of Little Muttering. His name ceases to be a regular topic of conversation. Some months later, Eleanor Croft is married off to a respectable and considerably older merchant from a neighbouring town. A good match, a safe match, one that re-establishes her family's good name. The gossip has run its full course, from a private whisper born of worry to a public spectacle fueled by speculation, and finally, to a settled piece of village law. It has policed social boundaries, caused real emotional pain, and ultimately reinforced the conservative order of things. You linger a moment longer in the quiet, sleeping village. The moon has risen, casting a silver light on the thatch and stone. The homes of the Gables, the Abernathys, the Crofts, and the Hemlocks are all dark and silent. The great drama of the day has been put to bed. The story has been absorbed into the soil of the place, becoming just another layer of human history, remembered only in fragments, in the occasional knowing look between old-timers, a ghostly echo of a whisper that once filled the air. And you realize that for all our modern technology, for all our instantaneous communication, the fundamental mechanics of how a story takes root and grows in a small community have not really changed at all. The fire may now be a screen, the teacup a smartphone, but the quiet, irresistible urge to tell a story remains exactly the same. What sports looked like to the ancient Greeks. The sun is a weight upon your shoulders. It is the brazen, unapologetic sun of the Peloponnese, bleaching the pale dust of the ground to a blinding white. You find yourself standing at the edge of a large, open courtyard, the heart of a place known as the gymnasium. The word itself might feel simple, but the place is much more than a modern gym. There is no roof overhead here, no air-conditioned sterility. The air is warm and alive, thick with the scent of hot earth, a nearby grove of cypress trees, and something else, something uniquely Greek. It's the smell of olive oil, mixed with sweat and fine sand. It is the perfume of effort. You are young. Your muscles are still learning the long, hard lessons of discipline. And here, in the gymnasium, is where you will be shaped. Not just your body, but your character. Because for the world you inhabit, physical excellence, arete, is not a hobby. It's a moral duty, a form of worship, an expression of what it means to be a true citizen. You walk from the shaded portico, where old men and philosophers are gathered in deep conversation. Their voices a low drone like bees in a hive. They occasionally glance over at the young men training, perhaps looking for a new pupil or just offering a silent critical judgment on your form. Getting unsolicited life advice while you're just trying to get a decent workout in. An ancient and timeless annoyance. You leave them to their endless debates and step fully into the sun. Your first stop is a small alcove-like room. Here, small clay jars, arabaloy, filled with golden olive oil, are lined up on a stone bench. You take one. The clay is cool against your hand. You unstop it and pour a generous amount into your palm, the oil thick and fragrant. Methodically, you begin to coat your body, your arms, your chest, your legs. This is not for tanning, and it is certainly not sunscreen, not like that infamous crocodile dung concoction the Egyptians were supposedly fond of. This oil is a ritual. It limbers the muscles, protects the skin from the harsh sun and the scrape of the dust. And most importantly, it accentuates the body, making every line and curve of muscle gleam under the bright light. It is an act of aesthetic preparation, making the human form a worthy offering of effort. Once you are gleaming, you walk to a trough filled with fine, pale sand. You scoop it up and dust yourself lightly, the fine grains clinging to the oil. This gives you a better grip for wrestling and also, paradoxically, helps with the cleaning process later. And now, you are ready. You are naked, oiled and dusted, a living statue waiting for motion. There's a freedom in this nakedness that is hard for the modern mind to grasp. It isn't shameful. It is honest. Stripped of armor, robes, or adornments, you are just a man. Your birth, your wealth, they are invisible here. In the gymnasium and later in the sacred games, you are judged only by the perfection of your form and the strength of your spirit. On the plus side, you never have to worry about what athletic gear is in fashion this season. That's one problem solved. Your trainer, the Paidotribes, approaches. He is an older man, his own body a testament to a lifetime of such training. His face is leathered by the sun, but his eyes are sharp. He carries a long, forked stick, not as a weapon, but as a pointer, a tool for correcting your posture, for tracing the line of a muscle that is not properly engaged. He is not a gentle coach. His praise is rare, his criticism constant and unsparing, but he is moulding you into the Greek ideal of kalokagathia, a word that elegantly binds the concept of being beautiful or noble with being good or virtuous. To be physically beautiful and athletically accomplished was to be morally sound. The body was a mirror to the soul. He leads you not to heavy weights or complex machinery, but to simple, fundamental movements. You will practice running, perfecting the length of your stride, the pump of your arms, the high knee lift. You will practice the long jump, holding lead or stone weights called halteres to propel you forward. Historians still argue whether the gymnasium's primary function was practical military preparation, making you a faster, stronger soldier for the phalanx, or if its purpose was grander, a holistic education in civic virtue, with sport as its central pillar. Looking at the other young men around you training for the javelin, the discus, the brutal pancration, you feel it's probably both. You are training to defend your city-state, yes, but you are also training to bring it glory, and that glory is ultimately for the gods. The greatest of all the competitions, the games at Olympia, are held every 4 years, not for entertainment, national pride or commercial gain, but as a sacred religious festival in honor of Zeus, king of the gods. The effort you expend in this dusty yard, the sweat that drips from your chin and traces paths through the sand on your skin, the burning in your muscles, it is a prayer. You are striving to be a little less mortal, a little more like the idealized, perfect forms of the gods themselves. At the end of your long session, when your body is tired and aching in that deeply satisfying way, comes the final ritual. You take up a curved metal scraper, a strigil. You begin the slow, methodical process of scraping the oil, sweat, and dust from your body. It comes off in thick, greasy curls. This gunk, known as gloios, is far from being just waste. In a rather quirky historical tidbit, this mixture, imbued with the sweat of a prime athlete, was sometimes collected and sold in little vials. People believed it had potent medicinal properties and could serve as a balm for aches, pains, and all sorts of other ailments. It's a bit like buying celebrity bathwater, but with considerably more dirt involved. The thought of a stranger rubbing your day's effort onto their sore knee is strange, but it speaks volumes about the almost magical reverence people had for the athletic body. Cleaned now, your skin tingling and raw, you finally put on your simple linen chiton. As you walk away from the training ground, your muscles humming with a pleasant exhaustion, you feel the day's lesson settle deep within you. Sport, to you and your people, is not a game you play. It is a life you lead. It is a path of discipline, beauty, and devotion, all performed under the watchful, judging eye of a hot and very demanding sun. And far off, in the future, the great festival at Olympia is calling to you. The journey is over. The days of walking dusty roads, sleeping under the stars, or in crowded roadside inns are behind you. You have arrived. And your first impression of Olympia is not of pristine marble, but of people. A vast, sprawling, chaotic city of tents and makeshift stalls has bloomed on the plains around the sacred precinct, the Altis. Thousands upon thousands of people are here. There are merchants hawking their wares, poets reciting epics for a handful of coins, politicians making speeches, and ambassadors negotiating treaties. The Olympic festival is the biggest party in the Hellenic world, and everyone is invited. Well, almost everyone. You wade through the throng, the air a thick cocktail of smells, roasting meat from 100 different sacrifices, overflowing latrines, the sweet scent of cheap wine, and over it all, the ever-present dust kicked up by 10,000 pairs of sandaled feet. The sound is a constant roar, a sea of voices from a dozen different dialects. But as you draw closer to the heart of the festival, you pass through a gateway and the feeling shifts. Here, inside the sacred grove, the sounds of commerce fade, replaced by a more reverent hum. You see the great temple of Zeus, a wonder of the world, its colossal structure asserting the god's dominance over this place. You see treasuries built by various city-states, small but opulent storehouses for their offerings to the gods. You join a great procession of athletes, trainers, and judges making its way towards a hulking ancient altar. This altar is not a neat marble block, but a towering conical pile of ash and bone, built up over centuries from the remains of sacrificed animals. Here, you take an oath. You swear before Zeus Horkios, Zeus of the Oaths, that you have trained for 10 consecutive months, that you will compete fairly, and that you will accept the judge's decisions. To break this oath is to invite divine wrath, a punishment far worse than any earthly disgrace. The religious rites observed, the games can finally begin. You find a place on the grassy embankment of the stadium, the great running track. There are no stone seats here, just a slope of packed earth. You sit among a restless, excited crowd of 30,000 men. And it is only men and boys. It's a famous, ironclad rule that no married women are permitted to spectate at Olympia. The penalty for being caught is to be thrown from the Taipeian rock. A truly quirky historical tidbit, however, is that there was one exception. The priestess of Demeter Shamine, who was given a seat of honor opposite the judges. Why she, and only she, was allowed this privilege is one of those delightful little mysteries. Perhaps it was a remnant of an even older cult on the site. Before Zeus muscled his way in, down on the track, the runners are taking their places at the starting line, a long stone sill called the balbis. They place their bare feet into parallel grooves carved into the stone. In front of them is the heisplex, an ingenious starting gate that looks like a pair of horizontal bars held up by ropes. A judge, the Hellanodikos, dressed in solemn purple robes, will shout the ancient equivalent of "ready, set," and at the right moment an official will drop a trigger, causing the bars to crash to the ground and release all the runners at the exact same instant. It's an elegant solution to the problem of the false start. The crowd falls silent. The tension is palpable. The official lets the mechanism fall. Crash! The runners explode forward. The event is the Stadion Race, the original and most prestigious event of the Games. It's a straight, flat-out sprint, one length of the stadium, about 200 meters. There are no lanes, just a mad dash for the finish line. The runners' bodies, oiled like yours was in the gymnasium, gleam in the sun. Their muscles strain, their faces are masks of concentration. The crowd erupts into a single unified roar, a wave of sound that pushes the runners forward. It is over in less than half a minute. One man crosses the line first, his chest breaking an invisible plane. He has won. He is the Stadionics. For the next 4 years, this entire Olympiad will be named after him. His is the first and purest taste of glory. From the simple elegance of the foot race, you move to the sandpit, a flattened area of ground designated for the Barea Athla, the heavy events. Here, the vibe changes. The energy is more focused, more primal. First, you watch the wrestling, the pale. 2 men coated in oil and then a fine layer of dust to allow for a grip, circle each other. They are a beautiful sight, like living sculptures carved from bronze. The goal is not to pin your opponent, but to throw him. 3 clean falls where a man's back or shoulders touch the ground, and you have a victor. It is a sport of leverage, balance, and explosive strength. They grapple, muscles bulging, sweat carving channels through the dust on their bodies. They move with a coiled, animal grace. A judge stands nearby with his forked stick, ever ready to separate them if they break a rule. Scholars continue to debate the exact purpose of that stick. Was it just for indicating a point or a foul? Or did the judges actually give misbehaving athletes a corrective smack? It certainly seems like an effective way to keep people in line. After the wrestling comes the boxing, the picks. And this is altogether more brutal. You see 2 fighters wrapping their hands. They are not using soft, padded gloves designed for protection. They use himantes, which are essentially long, hard leather thongs, wound tightly around the knuckles and wrists. Their purpose isn't really to protect their own hands, but to do more damage to the opponent. There are no rounds. There is no roped-off ring. The fight simply continues under the baking sun until one man can no longer continue, or signals his surrender by raising his index finger. It is a grueling test of endurance and pure, raw toughness. You watch as they trade blows, their movements economical, searching for an opening. The sound is a dull, percussive thud. Their faces swell, cuts begin to weep blood that traces paths down their dusty chests. This isn't the frenzied, desperate brawling you might imagine. It is methodical, patient, and terrifying. The crowd watches with a hushed intensity, appreciating the skill and the incredible courage on display. This is what it means to push the human body to its absolute limit, a raw and bloody offering laid at the feet of the gods. And above it all, the ever-present, unwavering sun beats down, a silent spectator to it all. The afternoon sun angles lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the stadium floor. The raw, visceral energy of the combat sports begins to recede, making way for an event that requires a different, more harmonious kind of excellence. It is time for the pentathlon. This is not for the brutish boxer or the lightning-fast sprinter. This is for the all-rounder, the man who embodies balance and grace across a range of disciplines. The great philosopher Aristotle himself called the pentathletes the most beautiful of all athletes, because their bodies were developed for both strength and speed in perfect symmetry. You find a good vantage point on the embankment, settling in for what will be a long and fascinating contest. There is no medal for each individual event here. The winner of the pentathlon is the man who proves himself superior overall. He is a generalist in a world of specialists, and in many ways his skill set is the most admired of all. The competition begins where all Greek athletics begin, with the stadion race. It is the same sprint you saw before, a pure test of speed. The pentathletes, however, are not built quite like the specialized sprinters. They are a little broader in the shoulder, a bit more heavily muscled in the thighs. They run with a powerful, driving stride, but perhaps without that last ounce of explosive fleetness. The man who wins this opening race gains an early advantage, but the day is far from over. From the sprint, the athletes move to the long jump, the halma. And this is nothing like the simple standing long jump you might picture. This event is a masterpiece of coordination and rhythm, and historians still argue passionately about its precise mechanics. It's almost certain that it wasn't a standing jump, but rather a running or skipping jump, and the technique involved a piece of equipment you've seen before, the halters. You watch as the first athlete takes his position. In each hand he holds a crescent-shaped weight made of lead or stone, each weighing anywhere from 2 to perhaps 10 pounds. He begins to move forward, not in a full sprint, but in a controlled approach. As he nears the takeoff board, a helper starts to play a tune on a small flute, the aulos. The music is not for entertainment, it provides a rhythm, a cadence for the athlete to time his final, crucial movements. This transforms the jump from a mere feat of strength into a kind of athletic ballet. In the final strides, he swings the halteres forward and up. At the peak of his jump, soaring through the hot air, his body an arc of disciplined power, he thrusts the weights violently down and back behind him. Physics takes over. The forward momentum of the weights is transferred to his body, propelling him just a little bit further, while the backward thrust helps him land cleanly on his feet in the sandpit, or scammer. The crowd murmurs in appreciation at a well-executed jump. It's a beautiful, complex motion, a harmony of speed, strength and timing, all set to the reedy music of the flute. The idea of competing with your own personal, live soundtrack is rather appealing. A bit more sophisticated than the motivational rock anthems blaring in a modern gym. Next, you follow the athletes to a different part of the field for the discus, the discos. The discus itself is a heavy, solid bronze disc, heavier than its modern counterpart. and its throwing requires a tremendous amount of rotational power. An athlete steps into the throwing area. He lifts the disc, feels its solid weight in his hand. You can see him running through the technique in his mind. Unlike the modern spin, the ancient technique as depicted on countless vases and in famous statues like Myron's Discobolus was more of a powerful, three-quarter turn and release. He starts his wind-up, his body coiling like a spring, his back muscles bunch, his whole torso twisting, and then he unleashes. With a great grunt of effort, he uncoils, and the bronze disc flies from his hand, spinning through the air, a flat, gleaming saucer against the blue sky. It hangs for a moment at its apex, seeming to defy gravity, before beginning its long, graceful arc back down to earth. It lands with a heavy thud in the turf, kicking up a spray of dirt. Judges run to mark the spot. The sheer power required is immense. This is the brute strength element of the pentathlon, a display of raw, explosive force. The fourth event is the javelin, the akon. Like the discus, it has its roots in warfare and hunting, but the athletic version has its own unique character. The javelin itself is a light, wooden shaft, not much taller than a man. The curious detail, a tidbit that distinguishes it entirely from the modern event, is the leather strap called the ankyle. The thrower loops this thong around the javelin's shaft near the center of gravity and hooks it with one or two fingers. You watch as a competitor begins his run-up. As he throws, the unwinding of the ankyle imparts a powerful spin to the javelin. This spin acts like rifling on a bullet, giving the projectile immense gyroscopic stability, making it fly straighter, farther, and with much greater accuracy than a simple unspun spear. It's a clever piece of ancient engineering. The javelin doesn't just sail through the air, it shoots, a straight, true line ending in a satisfying thwump as it sticks, quivering in the ground hundreds of feet away. By now, after 4 events, the field of competitors has likely been whittled down. The rules for determining the overall victor of the pentathlon are a source of endless scholarly debate. Perhaps if a single athlete won the first 3 events, the sprint, the jump, and the discus, he was declared the immediate winner, the triactor, and the last 2 events were cancelled. It's more likely, however, that points were accumulated, and only the top contenders advanced to the final deciding event, wrestling. So you find yourself back at the sandpit, watching 2 of the day's best all-round athletes, their bodies weary from the preceding trials, grappling under the hot sun. This is the final test. Having proven their speed, their explosive grace, their raw power, and their technical skill, they must now prove their fighting spirit. It's the same wrestling you saw earlier, a contest of leverage and throws. But for these men, at the end of a long and grueling day, it's a pure test of will. One of them finally manages the 3rd throw, a clean takedown. His opponent slumps to the sand in exhaustion and defeat. The victor stands, chest heaving, raising a weary arm to the sky. He is the winner of the pentathlon. He may not be the fastest or the strongest, but he is the most complete. He is the living embodiment of the Greek ideal of a balanced, beautiful, and capable man. The last echo of the final contest fades across the now empty stadium. The sun, a great, weary orange eye, sinks towards the horizon, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. The formal games are over. The sacred oaths have been fulfilled. The gods have been honored with the absolute limits of human effort, and victors have been crowned. And what, you might wonder, is the prize for all this striving, this pain, this decade of discipline? There is no multi-million-dollar endorsement deal. There are no jewel-encrusted trophies. There is no giant cardboard check, which would have been wildly impractical to carry home on a donkey anyway. The prize for all this superhuman effort is a simple wreath. You are drawn to the temple of Zeus, where the closing ceremonies are taking place. The victors, cleaned and dressed in their finest robes, their bodies still bearing the marks of their contests. A swollen eye here, a scraped knee there, are gathered. The Hellenodike, the purple-robed judges, preside. And one by one the champions are called forward. A special branch, cut with a golden sickle from the sacred wild olive tree, the Kotinos Kallistephanos, which grew behind the temple, has been woven into crowns. As a victor's name is called, the sprinter who flew across the dust, the boxer who endured, the wrestler who dominated, the graceful pentathlete, he steps forward. A judge places the olive wreath upon his head. And that is it. The material prize, a handful of leaves that will dry and crumble within days. But you know, and everyone here knows, that this simple crown of leaves is heavier and more valuable than any treasure of gold. It is a symbol. It signifies that this man, for this one brief, shining moment, has achieved a kind of mortal perfection. He has been touched by the gods. The crowd roars its approval. Spectators shower the victor with flowers and ribbons. He is hoisted onto the shoulders of his friends and countrymen. This is the moment he has trained for, dreamed of. He is no longer just a man from Athens or Sparta or Corinth. He is an Olympian, Olympios, a title he will carry for the rest of his life. His statue, a perfect bronze likeness, will be commissioned and erected here in the Altis, the sacred grove. He will stand in immortal company, his name recorded for all time. A poet might be hired to compose a victory ode, an epinikeon, in his honor. Pindar was the most famous composer of these, praising not just his strength, but the virtues of his family and his city. And this is where the real rewards begin, the journey home. Imagine yourself now, not as the aspiring athlete, but as the victor, crowned with his fragile olive wreath. Your return to your home city is a spectacle that will be talked about for generations. You will not sneak in through a side gate. A section of the city's defensive walls will be ceremonially torn down for you to enter through. It's a powerful symbolic gesture. A city that produces men like you has no need for walls of mere stone. Your strength is its true defense. You are met by a procession of citizens. You are paraded through the streets, a living hero. Songs are sung in your honor. Feasts are held. The city celebrates you as if you had won a great military victory. And in a way you have. You have defeated the best of the Hellenes and brought unmatched glory, kleos, to your home. That glory reflects on every citizen. The practical benefits are staggering. As an Olympic victor, you would likely be granted meals for life at public expense in the Prytaneum, the city's state dining hall, a tremendous honor. You might be given a prominent seat at the theatre, exempt from taxes and presented with a huge cash prize from your city's treasury. It was, in essence, the ancient world's greatest lottery win, and you earned it with your own blood and sweat. You become a celebrity, a local legend. Parents will point you out to their sons as an example to emulate. Your name becomes a byword for excellence. In a fascinating and rather quirky extension of this hero worship, sometimes the perceived power of an Olympian victor took on a truly supernatural dimension. The story of Theagenes of Thasos is a case in point. A celebrated boxer and pancratiast, his statue was so revered that after his death, one of his old rivals took to whipping the bronze figure every night. According to the legend, the statue fell on the man and killed him, and was subsequently put on trial for murder, found guilty, and exiled by being thrown into the sea. Only when the oracle at Delphi commanded its return did the people of Thasos fish it out and resume worshipping it. This is how thin the line between hero and god could become. So you can see that the weight of that olive wreath was immense. It was the key that unlocked a lifetime of honor, security, and a form of earthly immortality. But for every crowned victor, there were hundreds of defeated athletes. And for them, there was nothing, not even a silver medal. The Greeks were not big on participation trophies. Second place was not celebrated. The defeated athlete was expected to slink home by the back roads, avoiding the crowds, his head hung in shame. Pindar wrote of them, "By back ways they slink away, bitten by misfortune." The contrast between glory and disgrace was absolute. As you stand there, watching the new heroes celebrating under the torchlight of the feast, you understand the system completely. Historians still argue whether this intense, winner-take-all focus on individual glory was a cohesive force for the perpetually quarreling Greek city-states, or if it simply exacerbated their rivalries. It was probably a bit of both. The Olympic truce, the Echecharia, which guaranteed safe passage for all travellers to and from the Games, was a remarkable diplomatic achievement, a sacred pause in the constant state of warfare. But the fierce pride a city took in its victor certainly fanned the flames of intercity competition. You look once more at the young champion, his face beaming, his olive crown perched slightly askew. He has sacrificed his youth for this moment. He has endured unimaginable pain and discipline. He has honored his gods and his city. He has transcended the ordinary lot of man, and for the rest of his days, whether he is dining at the public's expense, being pointed out in the marketplace, or simply feeling the phantom weight of the wreath on his brow, he will know the profound truth of what it meant to compete in the ancient games. The struggle was everything, and the victory was eternal. The truth about childhood in the year 1000 AD. Let's drift back in time, not to a world of marble temples or grand pyramids, but to a quieter, smokier, damper place. The calendar on the monastery wall has just ticked over to the year 1000. Forget what you think you know about the dark ages. The world is not ending despite what a few excitable monks might be proclaiming. It is simply turning. It is a world lit by fire and governed by the sun, a world that smells of damp earth and wood smoke. You find yourself arriving, as we all do, without much say in the matter. You are born not in a hospital, nor even in a separate bedroom, but in the heart of the home, and the home is a single room. Imagine it. The walls are wattle and daub, a lattice of woven sticks packed with a mixture of wet soil, clay, straw, and animal dung. The floor is packed earth, trodden down over years, and the roof is a thick layer of thatch. There is a single central hearth for the fire, but there is no chimney. The smoke simply finds its own way out through the eaves, staining the inside of the roof a greasy, tarry black. It's the sort of open-plan living space that designers today would call rustic, which is a polite way of saying it has a live-in goat. Your first sensations are of this place. The air is thick, a permanent fog of smoke that stings your newborn eyes. It smells of burning peat, of stewed vegetables from the perpetually bubbling pot over the fire, of damp wool, unwashed bodies, and the faint, unmistakable smell of the family's cow, which might be sleeping just a few feet away on the other side of a low wicker partition. This is your world. Your birth is a perilous, female-centric affair. The men have been sent out. Your mother is attended by her own mother, her sisters, and perhaps a local woman known for her skill as a midwife. There are no antiseptics, no surgical tools. There are prayers, murmured charms, and a deep, practical knowledge passed down through generations. Your arrival into this smoky room is the first great gamble of your life, for both you and your mother. And now you are here, a small, wailing bundle of life in a world that is not especially gentle to new things. You are immediately handed off, cleaned with a rough cloth, and then you are swaddled tightly. Your arms are straightened against your sides, your legs held together, and long strips of wool or linen are wound around you, from your shoulders to your feet, until you are a stiff, compact parcel. It feels restrictive, but it is done with care. They believe it will help your limbs grow straight and strong, it will keep you warm, and, on a purely practical level, it makes you easier to manage. You are now a neat, portable little person log, unable to flail about, scratch your own face, or accidentally roll into the embers of the hearth. For the first few months, this is your existence. You are a swaddled form, living in a world of muted senses. Your vision is blurry, drawn to the flickering dance of the fire, the only bright light in the gloom. Your world is a tapestry of sounds, the low murmur of your parents' voices speaking a language you do not yet understand, the crackle of the fire, the rhythmic thud of your mother grinding grain, the bleating of a lamb, the howling of the ever-present wind outside. Survival is the only real goal of this period. Infant mortality is astonishingly high. It is a stark, unavoidable fact of your world that perhaps 1 in 3, or even close to half, of all children born will not see their first birthday. A simple fever, a cough that settles in the chest, a bout of diarrhea. These are not minor ailments. They are mortal threats, fought with herbal remedies and desperate prayers. So your family watches you. They watch your breath. They feel your skin for heat. They guard you with a fierce, quiet intensity. Very quickly after your birth, you will be baptized. This is of absolute, paramount importance. In the eyes of the Church, an unbaptized infant who dies cannot enter heaven. The idea of limbo, a sort of neutral waiting room for such souls, was a comfort, but no one wanted to take that chance. So, often within days, you are taken to the small, cold stone church. The priest, one of the few literate men for miles around, will pour freezing holy water over your head, speak the Latin words, and in that moment, you are officially brought into the fold. You have a name. You have a soul. You are now a recognized part of the Christian world, a member of the flock. A huge relief for your parents, and probably a rather shocking experience for you. For a long time, a bleak historical theory suggested that because so many children died, parents in this era maintained an emotional distance, not allowing themselves to become too attached to a life that could be so easily extinguished. Historians now largely reject this idea as far too simple. Grief was real and devastating, but its expression was different. People lived with death as a constant familiar neighbor. It did not mean they did not love. The proof is in the small tender acts. Your mother feeds you from her own body, the most reliable and nutritious food you will ever have. She murmurs to you. She rocks you. You sleep beside her, sharing her warmth through the long, cold nights in a communal bed that is little more than a straw-stuffed mattress on the floor, shared with your father and any other siblings you might have. There are other, quieter forms of protection at play too. This is where faith blends with folklore. A quirky tidbit from the time is the belief in changelings, that fairies or malevolent spirits might steal a beautiful, healthy human baby and leave a sickly fairy creature in its place. To ward this off, your parents might place a piece of iron, a nail, a small knife in your cradle, as iron was believed to repel such entities, or perhaps a piece of red thread would be tied around your wrist. These are not acts of indifference. They are expressions of a desperate, powerful hope, a desire to anchor you to this world using every tool, both sacred and secular, at their disposal. So you survive your first week, then your first month. You begin to uncurl from your swaddling for longer periods. Your eyes start to focus. You learn to recognize faces, your mother's, framed by a simple wool wimple, your father's, often grimy, with dirt from the fields, his beard rough against your cheek. Your world, though it is just one small dark room, begins to gain shape and meaning. And as you approach that monumental milestone, your first birthday, having navigated the most treacherous rapids of your young life, you are no longer just a fragile visitor. You are here to stay. Having won the initial perilous gamble of survival, you enter a new phase of your existence. You have made it past your first birthday, maybe even your second or third. The swaddling cloths have been put away for good, and you are now a toddler, a small, upright being navigating the compact world of your family's home and the patch of ground just outside the door. You are dressed simply. Your clothes are not boys' clothes or girls' clothes. They are just children's clothes. You wear a single, shapeless garment, a long tunic of rough, undyed wool or linen, reaching down to your ankles. It's practical, easy to make, and forgiving of sudden growth spurts. In the cold months, you might have leggings and simple leather turn shoes. In the summer, you go barefoot. Your hair is likely left to grow long and shaggy. To a modern eye, you and your siblings of different genders would look almost identical. Your childhood is, in this way, unisex. Your world is still small, but it is rich with sensory detail. The floor of your home is not a clean, safe surface. It is the earth itself, often covered with straw or rushes that are periodically swept out and replaced. And these rushes are a miniature ecosystem. They harbour fleas, they absorb spills, they are littered with scraps of food, discarded animal bones from last night's pottage, and all manner of other detritus. To you, it is a landscape for exploration. A chicken might wander in through the open doorway and you will chase it with glee. You might find a curiously shaped stone or a beetle making its slow way across the floor, and it will be your treasure for the afternoon. The question of play in this era is a fascinating one. For a long time, the prevailing academic view was that childhood, as a distinct period of innocence and play, simply didn't exist. Children were seen as miniature adults, expected to work as soon as they were able. But that view is too stark. Children have always played. The evidence is simply harder to find because the toys were not mass-produced plastic. They were ephemeral, organic things. So, what are your toys? You have no toy box, no dedicated playroom. Your toys are found, borrowed, and imagined. A smooth, round stone from the riverbed becomes a ball. A fallen branch becomes a horse or a sword. Your father might hastily carve a simple wooden doll or a spinning top for you in a spare moment by the firelight. A rough, artless thing imbued with love. Archaeologists have found small, child-sized ceramic pots and bowls, suggesting that playing house is a game that has been around for a very long time indeed. You might also play with the real-life props of the adult world. A discarded spindle from your mother's weaving, a blunt wooden spoon from the cooking pot. In this way, your play is also a form of practice. The lines between work and play are wonderfully blurry. Your chores are not a list tacked to the wall. They are simply part of the flow of life, learned through imitation. You are now the smallest set of hands, and even the smallest hands can be useful. Your mother sends you to fetch water from the village well or a nearby stream. This is not a quick trip to the tap. It means hauling a small wooden bucket, heavy and sloshing, over uneven ground. It's a game of concentration. You are asked to gather firewood. This becomes an adventure in the nearby woods, searching for fallen branches and twigs, your eyes peeled for interesting mushrooms or wild berries, though you've been strictly warned which ones will give you a bad stomach and which are safe. It's a lesson in botany and survival, disguised as a chore. You trail after your older siblings into the fields. While they are helping your father with the real work of hoeing or weeding, your job might be to scare the birds away from the precious shoots of grain. You run through the fields, shouting and waving your arms, a human scarecrow. It's an important job, but it is also one that feels like a game. You are helping to guard the family's food supply, the very stuff that will become the bread you eat. This idea of purposeful play extends everywhere. You will see your mother spinning wool, the spindle turning, the thread growing longer and longer. She might give you a tuft of raw wool to play with, and you will try to copy her motions, your clumsy little fingers learning the feel and texture of the fibers. You watch your father mending a fence or sharpening a tool, and you absorb the rhythm of his work. Historians still argue whether this early integration into the world of adult work was a pragmatic necessity that robbed children of their youth, or a more holistic form of education that provided a deep sense of purpose and belonging from a very early age. Seeing the pride on your face when you successfully bring back a handful of kindling, it feels much more like the latter. This world is not, however, an idyll free from danger. The yard outside your cottage is not a manicured, fenced-in lawn. It's a shared space with animals. The family pig roams freely. A passing horse and cart could crush a careless toddler in an instant. The well is a gaping, dark mouth that could swallow a child whole. The nearby river that is so fun to splash in during the summer can become a raging, deadly torrent after a storm. Your parents' supervision is constant but not oppressive. They shout warnings, they pull you back from the fire, but they cannot watch you every second. Learning to navigate these everyday risks is part of your education, a grim but essential curriculum in self-preservation. A common and quirky Anglo-Saxon charm, recorded in a manuscript called the Lacnunga, offers a remedy for an elf-shot horse, a sudden mysterious illness. Many historians believe such charms reveal a worldview where danger was not just physical, but also supernatural, with invisible spirits and malevolent forces as real as a river's current. As you grow, so does your understanding of the world. Your universe is your family, your small cluster of neighboring homes, and the church. You learn the stories, not from books, because there are no books in your home, but from your grandfather's telling of old hero tales by the fire, and from the priest's sermons, which paint a vivid picture of heaven and a terrifyingly real hell. Your morality is simple, shaped by these stories. Be obedient, do your works, say your prayers, and fear the wrath of God and your Father, who are sometimes presented as being remarkably similar in temperament. And through it all, you play. In the scraps of time between chores, in the long twilight of a summer evening, you and the other village children will gather, playing tag among the cottages, a timeless game of chase, that connects your world to ours across 1,000 years of history. Section 3. The world of your earliest years, that small circle of home, yard and church, cannot hold you forever. Around the age of 7, a significant change occurs. In the eyes of your community and the church, this is the so-called age of reason. You are no longer considered an infant, a being of pure instinct. You are now seen as capable of understanding right from wrong, of committing sin, and therefore of contributing to society in a more formal, structured way. Your childhood has not ended, but its first, most sheltered chapter is certainly closed. You are leaving the family hearth, not just physically, but metaphorically. It is time for your real training to begin. Where you go depends entirely on the circumstances of your birth. For the vast majority of children, perhaps 90% of you, your path leads directly into the fields. You are the child of a farming family, tied to the land your parents work, land that is likely owned by a distant lord. Your apprenticeship is to the seasons themselves. You join your father and older brothers in their daily toil. Your tasks are no longer the play work of scaring birds. Your small hands are now put to more serious use. You learn to properly weed the rows of barley and oats, your back aching from bending over for hours. You learn to distinguish the useful herbs from the noxious weeds. During the harvest, the entire village mobilizes, and you are part of this frantic, essential effort. You follow behind the sides of the men, gathering the cut stalks of wheat into bundles called sheaves. It is hard, repetitive, scratchy work under a hot sun, the sharp stalks raising welts on your arms. But there is also a sense of communal purpose, of shared struggle toward a common goal, getting the food in before the autumn rains begin. You are also given responsibility for the animals. You might be the family shepherd or swineherd. You spend your days out in the common pasture or the woods, guarding the family's precious few sheep or their lone pig. This sounds idyllic, like something from a pastoral poem, but the reality is a mix of profound boredom and moments of high-stress responsibility. You are alone for hours on end, armed with a simple staff. Your job is to make sure the animals don't wander off, and, more importantly, to protect them from predators. A wolf pack could decimate a flock in minutes, a loss your family could not afford. So you learn to be vigilant, to read the landscape, to know the sounds of the forest. In your solitude, you might practice your slingshot on a tree stump or carve on a piece of wood. It's a lonely graduation from the communal play of your earlier years. But what if you are not a farmer's child? What if your father is a craftsman in a growing town? Your path will be different. You will be sent to a workshop, perhaps your own father's, or that of a relative or master craftsman, to begin your apprenticeship. You enter a world that smells of sawdust if you are to be a carpenter, or of hot metal and coal smoke if you are to be a blacksmith, or of curing leather if you are to be a tanner. For the first few years, you are the workshop drudge. You sweep the floors, you run errands, you tend the fire, you clean the tools. It is tedious, often back-breaking work. You are learning the trade from the ground up, by observation. You watch the master at his craft, absorbing the deftness of his hands, the rhythm of his hammer, the sureness of his eye. There is no manual, no textbook. Your education is entirely visual and practical. Eventually, you will be allowed to handle the tools, to perform simple tasks, always under the master's critical gaze. A mistake might earn you a sharp word or a cuff to the head. It's a harsh pedagogy, but an effective one. Now let's imagine a more gilded path. You are the child of a noble. Your world is not one of mud and toil, but of cold stone castles and courtly manners. Yet your childhood also involves being sent away. A widespread practice among the nobility was fostering. Around the age of 7 or 8, both boys and girls were often sent to live in the household of another, higher-ranking noble family. If you are a boy, you become a page. Your life is now one of structured service in a great lord's hall. You learn to serve at table, pouring wine and carving meat with precision. You learn to care for the lord's horses and his hunting dogs. You learn the complex etiquette of courtly life, when to speak, when to be silent, how to bow. Most importantly, you begin your military training. You practice swordsmanship with wooden swords in the castle yard. You learn to ride a war horse. You learn the art of the hunt, which was itself a form of mock battle. This system, which may seem strange to us, was a cornerstone of noble society. It built alliances between families, and it ensured a boy learned the ways of his class from a respected patron, rather than from his own, potentially overindulgent parents. It was a formal system, for it takes a village, just for a very specific, very heavily armed village. If you are a girl of noble birth, you are also sent away to learn the duties of a lady in another great household. You will not learn to fight with swords, but you will learn to command a different kind of army, the small army of servants required to run a great estate. You learn the arts of spinning and weaving, not for subsistence but to create fine tapestries. You learn basic household medicine and the management of supplies. And you learn deportment, music, and perhaps a little reading, enough to manage the Psalms. Your education is entirely geared towards your future role, to be the wife of another lord, a manager of a household, and a bearer of heirs. There is one other, very different path. What if you are a boy who shows a particular aptitude for learning, or a pious disposition? Or what if your family has too many sons and simply cannot afford to feed another mouth? You might be given to the church. It's a practice scholars call oblature. A young child, sometimes as young as 7, would be given to a monastery to be raised and educated by the monks. This could be seen as a great opportunity, a path to literacy and a life free from brutal physical labor. It was also an irreversible decision. You would learn Latin. You would learn to read and write, to copy manuscripts in the scriptorium. You would chant the daily offices, your small voice joining the ancient plain song. It was a life of quiet contemplation and discipline, a complete removal from the world you knew. A rather quirky side effect of this was that monasteries, full of men who hadn't experienced normal family life since they were 7, often became sources of some very strange writing about the outside world. Whether in field, workshop, castle, or monastery, this period of your life is defined by learning through service and imitation. You are being shaped, purposefully and rigorously, into the adult you are destined to become. The notion of a prolonged, carefree childhood is a luxury this world simply cannot afford. Your value, your very identity, is becoming inextricably linked to the work you do. Time moves differently in a world without clocks. The days are measured by the position of the sun, the seasons by the cycles of planting and harvest. And your childhood, which seemed to stretch out endlessly when you were small, begins to shorten and compress as you approach your early teens. You arrive at a threshold, but it's a blurry one. There is no high school graduation, no 16th birthday party, no official universal age when you are suddenly declared an adult. Instead, childhood simply ends. It concludes not with a ceremony, but with the assumption of adult responsibilities. You are somewhere between 12 and 15 years old. Your body has begun the awkward, lurching transition of puberty. Your voice deepens, your shoulders broaden if you are a boy. If you are a girl, you have likely begun to menstruate, a biological reality that signals to the world that you are now capable of fulfilling your primary social function, marriage and childbearing. Our modern concept of the teenager, a distinct social category for a person in this transitional phase, is completely absent. It's a luxury that hasn't been invented yet. You are not a teenager, you are a youth or a maiden, a young adult in waiting, and the waiting period is very short. For you, the farmer's son, the end of childhood means you are now strong enough to handle a full-sized plough. You walk beside your father, no longer just gathering the sheaves but wielding the heavy tools of the trade yourself. You are counted as a full field hand. Your contribution to the family's survival is now equal to that of a man, and so you are treated as one. You begin to join the other men at the alehouse after a long day's work, taking your place on the bench, a rite of passage marked by sharing a cup of murky, home-brewed ale. If you are an apprentice in a workshop, these are the years you transition from drudge to skilled helper. The master trusts you with more complex tasks. You might be allowed to shoe a horse on your own or finish a piece of furniture. Your hands, once clumsy, are now sure and competent. You are earning your keep not just with sweat, but with skill. You are beginning to think about the day when you might become a master yourself, with your own workshop and your own apprentices. For you, the young noble, the end of childhood is marked by the exchange of your wooden practice sword for a real one, made of sharpened steel. You are now a squire. You accompany your lord into battle, not as an observer, but as a participant. Your job is to assist him, to carry his spare weapons, to guard his back. It is a terrifying and exhilarating leap. The games of the castle yard are over. This is real combat, and the stakes are life and death. The knighthood you have dreamed of is now within reach, a prize to be earned through courage and loyalty on the battlefield. For the girl of noble birth, your graduation is your betrothal. Marriage in this era, especially among the aristocracy, is not about romantic love. It is a strategic alliance between families, a transaction of land, power, and influence. Your father and the head of another family will have negotiated your match years ago. You might be marrying a man you have met only once, a man who may be decades your senior. You are a valuable political asset, and your personal feelings are, for the most part, irrelevant. Your wedding day marks the definitive end of your childhood. You leave your foster home and your own family behind, travelling to the castle of your new husband to take up your role as its lady. You are now in command of a household, with all the immense responsibilities that entails. Your life's work has begun. Even in the monastery, this transition happens. The boy oblate, now a young novice, takes his final vows. He formally renounces the outside world, pledging his life to the monastic order. His childhood of learning and chanting has blossomed into a lifelong, unbreakable commitment. He is now a monk, a brother in Christ. His identity fully and finally subsumed into that of the community. It is a fascinating feature of this society that while physical adulthood is recognized early, full legal adulthood often came later. A mainstream historical fact is that in many parts of Europe around this time, the age of legal majority, when a man could inherit land or manage his own legal affairs, was often 21. so you could be a father, a soldier, a master craftsman at 16, but still considered a minor in the eyes of the law in certain contexts. Life was a series of overlapping and sometimes contradictory phases, not the neat, linear progression we imagine today. A deeply interesting and debated part of this transition is the concept of youths as a distinct social force. Historians argue whether the bands of unmarried young men, the squires, the apprentices, the farmhands waiting for their inheritance, formed a unique and often disruptive subculture. These were young men with adult bodies and capabilities, but without the responsibilities of land or a family to temper them. They were often the source of brawls, riots, and general social mayhem, a kind of semi-permanent bachelor party that could sometimes threaten the stability of a village. They were the engine of society, but also its most volatile element. And what about love and romance? While your marriage might be arranged, that doesn't mean affection was absent. The songs of wandering troubadours and the popular romances of the day were full of tales of chivalrous love and pining lovers. A quirky tidbit from the period is the existence of so-called penny-royale love charms, herbs believed to either induce love or, conveniently, to terminate an unwanted pregnancy, suggesting that for all the formal rules, unsanctioned relationships certainly happened. Affection could and did grow within marriages, but it was often seen as a fortunate byproduct, not a prerequisite. So your childhood journey from that smoky wattle and daub hut reaches its end. You have survived the immense perils of infancy. You have learned your world through a blend of work and play, and you have been rigorously trained for the life you were born into. You now stand on the cusp of adulthood, looking not at a horizon of infinite choice, but at a clearly defined path. Your life story has in many ways already been written for you by your birth, your gender, and your social station. There is a certain sadness in this for the modern mind, this apparent lack of freedom, but there might also have been a profound sense of security. You knew who you were, you had a place. You belonged to your family, your village, your trade, your lord. From the moment of your birth in that single smoky room, you were part of a web of duties and obligations, a web that could be constricting, but also held you fast. Your childhood was not a waiting room for life to begin. It was life, in all its smoky, muddy, and meaningful reality.